Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei was only a normal kid? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. I was a completely average high school student. In more detail, there was absolutely nothing special about me. I was the kid you would find in the arcade after school wasting all of his money. I was the kid you would see working part-time at a fast food restaurant. I was the kid you'd see on the school roof during school hours because he couldn't stand the teachers rambling. I was totally normal and it hurt a little knowing that I could easily be replaced by my next-door neighbor. It didn't really control me, though. I was trying to make the most of my life because I knew I could die at any moment without experiencing what I wanted to. Unfortunately, that involved having a girlfriend and everything that came with her. Although, on one fateful and seemingly lucky afternoon, Yuma Mono, a girl who seemed to be very polite while looking cute, had asked me out as I was on my way home from school. I was a skeptic and I always have been. I had a hard time believing in religion and the paranormal, but this event and events that would appear to be similar were added to my list. I mean, I hadn't seen this girl before and she doesn't go to my school, so there really was no point in thinking about those things when I saw the girl. Although, Yuma said that she had fallen in love with me ever since she first saw me, so I ended up thinking she had been stalking me for some time before she built up the courage to ask the big question. In the end, after some crying, embarrassment and heartbreak from the poor girl, I offered to be her friend and gave her my phone number. That evening we had made plans to hang out around the city for most of the day. It seemed like a date at first as it was just me and this cute girl, but it turned out to be more entertaining than I thought it would be. There were no romantic aspects to our little adventure around the city. And then as the sunset slowly fell on the horizon, Yuma and I sat on the edge of a water fountain in a park that was conveniently placed at the top of a large set of stairs. We were basically given the orange and purple hues of the dying sun. After some small talk and humor that we both seemed to enjoy, Yuma jumped to her feet and held her hands behind her back with a gentle smile. And then I died shortly after with no recollection of what had happened as it was too fast for my eyes to track. I do know I had a gaping hole in my stomach and that I was quickly bleeding out and that I didn't see Yuma anywhere and was starting to get worried, not caring for myself as I usually did. And then I woke up in my bed like nothing had happened. And on that day, I found another gaping hole in my stomach. This time, I knew what had caused it and who had the power to do it, but I didn't care much for memorizing the face of that malicious being. They did have a set of black wings, though, which was probably a bad omen, not that I believed in the paranormal or anything like that. The following morning, I woke up next to a naked Rias Gremory cuddling me in bed, who had then explained that I was now her devil servant or something like that. I acted neutral like I generally did in those kinds of situations, but on the inside I was confused as to why I had been killed 2 days in a row. That was my only thought process for that entire morning. I guess I could shorten this whole story and say that I had been killed twice and had become a devil, but that wouldn't be very fun. That was how I found myself standing in the Occult Research Club's mansion in the middle of a dense group of trees at the back of my school, though. Everything that had happened previously was just a precursor to what was going to come. I looked at the mansion as I approached the building. It was a nice building. I genuinely liked it as it was made of a dark wood in a Victorian style. It had fancy couches in the main clubroom, velvet carpet and large windows, not to mention some kind of pentagram in one corner of the room. As strange as it sounded to me, I didn't think the other rooms in the building were used at all, as none of the doors seemed to have ever been used. So I pointed at the pentagram in confusion as I had nothing else to observe or mention other than the people that I could care less about. What exactly is that used for? Akeno Himejima, a black-haired third year with purple eyes, white skin and what should be considered a very good body, stepped forward with a smile. It's a magic circle that has been designed for teleportation, if you want to call it that. I frowned and nodded my head once in thanks. Rias was currently showering behind a curtain that was in the side of the wall, and I couldn't help but glance over in that direction. I ended up shaking my head with a sigh before I timidly parked my body on the only couch that was facing a window. It had a small coffee table and another couch opposite it as well. The room was quiet and it disturbed me just a little. I have never really been a people person. The thought of having to deal with a complete stranger wasn't exactly terrifying, but it did make me feel nervous. Especially when I know I've done something wrong and will have to face the consequences of my actions. They were always the worst moments. I looked around the room once more, but decided to look at the other members of this strange club. Hyoudou Kiba, a second year that the girls consider to be handsome. Short blonde hair, large blue eyes that I knew held a fake gentleness and a mildly average form. He's also known as the Prince of Kuo, but it's only because of the female students and their ridiculous infatuation. He's leaning on a wall next to one of the large windows. Kaneko Taojo, a first-year student that is rather cute. Short white hair, small brown eyes and a permanent stoic face that did not fit her petite frame. She's widely known as Kuo's mascot and guys and girls alike love her because of how cute she looks. I guess she likes sweets because she's eating some as I look at her sitting on the couch opposite me. Akeno Himejima. I've already looked at her enough, but she's known as one of the two big sisters of Kuo right next to Rias. She's at the end of the room pouring tea into two separate cups and is smiling while humming. That smile looks too fake to be real to me at the moment, so I couldn't help but frown just a little more. And then there was Rias Gremory who had just sat across from me. Long crimson hair, blue-green eyes that appeared to be mischievous, and a small smile. She thanked Akeno as a cup of tea was placed on the table in front of her, followed by a thanks from myself as the other cup Akeno held was placed in front of me. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. If I had to be completely honest, I don't think I am ready to deal with the annoying crap that's to come. I mean, there's obviously some religious showdown going on if I really have been turned into a devil and was killed by what I assume is a fallen angel. I think I had the whole conversation already thought out. Say nothing, Gremory. I think I have the whole thing figured out already. Religious war is happening. I was killed because I have some power or as a descendant of someone powerful. You revived me for that very reason, and here I am, skipping all of the details. I wonder what my teachers would think of me if they were in your position, Gremory. Rias blinked once as I spat out everything I had to say before she could ramble on about things I could care less about. Although, I think I was about to be proven wrong as I detected Ria's smirk. You're kind of right, Issei. The war had already happened between the angels, fallen angels and devils. There's a truce at the moment and the fallen angels that killed you, well, we have reasons to believe that they've deserted the Grigori and Azazel, the leader of the fallen angels. I didn't just revive you because of the power that these fallen angels were obviously afraid of. You seem to be of some use to the underworld and myself. I took a sip from the teacup as I found myself deep in thought. So I wasn't killed because there was a war. The war had ended already, and that meant I didn't have to fight in a desperate attempt to save everyone I loved. Although, I only really love my parents in a familial way as I have no friends. I think all of the guys at school are afraid to approach me. And the Grigori, a faction that must hold a lot of power in this new world I've been introduced to. It's run by Azazel, a guy who is very busy and had no time to stop this group of deserters or a guy who could care less. I'd like to think that this Azazel fits the first description, but I have a feeling he's not what I expect him to be. Last but not least, Ria's reason for reviving me. It's obviously because of my hidden power. I mean, it's not like it is obvious and that I'm able to figure out why she needs to revive me for my power. If I actually thought about the issues at hand, I would be able to figure out that a lot of the pure-blood devils must have been killed in the war and that there's some sort of purist movement going on that is Ria's stuck in the midst of it just because she's a female and is ready to be married to some cocky guy. Oh, hey, what do I know, I figured out all of Ria's reasons and she doesn't even need to tell me. So, what's my power, then? I don't need you to tell me why you've revived me, as I've gotten the gist of it through my amazing deduction skills, so we may as well get straight to the only topic that I care about. Rias rose an eyebrow as Akeno tried to hide a giggle behind one of her hands. Rias has every right to be confused, though. She didn't tell me anything extensive about herself of what's really going on, and she obviously didn't think I was able to pick up these things, so I understand her feelings right now. Well, if you really want to know, all you have to do is get into a stance that you think is powerful and feel for something deep inside of you. It's really simple. It really was simple. Getting into a powerful stance was easy as I didn't think there was such thing as a powerful stance, but the next part was the hardest as Ria's words were quite cryptic. Feel for something deep inside of me? What the hell is that supposed to mean? I awkwardly stood in front of the 4 club members as I held my eyes shut, frowning. I couldn't really feel anything deep inside of me, so I didn't understand why I was standing still in a neutral position. Maybe my body language actually had something to do with it. I slowly shook my head and muttered a few nonsensical words under my breath. I opened my eyes and sat back down, awkwardly waiting for someone to break the silence. I looked at Rias, who was smiling gently, to an Akeno that was trying to hide a giggle once more, to a Kaneko that was as stoic as ever, and then to a Kiba that was smiling passively. I don't understand why they were looking at me the way they were. I guess my actions were a bit comedic, but I still didn't understand why they seemed to be holding back their laughter that shouldn't exist in the first place. Maybe I did something weird without knowing. So have you had enough already, Issei? I shook my head in what could only be described as an attempt to move the conversation on to something completely different. I really didn't like the way this conversation was heading as I did not like being the center of everyone's attention. I'll try it home later on tonight when I feel I'm ready. There's no point in rushing it, I guess. Rias nodded. I really was going to try again tonight, though. I was ready to unleash the dragon, as some people would say, but I don't think my power would be that great. I'm only normal, after all. You helped a member of the church. There are enemies. I was back in the clue room and Rias was shouting at me for helping an innocent girl. Even though she had no clue on the Japanese language and only knew English, I was able to communicate with her and point her in the direction of the abandoned church the city had left behind, as that was her destination. She did want me to go with her in case she got lost again, but I didn't really care. I did my part and it was her turn to do her own part. Listen, I may be a devil now, but I'm not as big of an ass as you think I am. Rias looked shocked at my statement while Akeno giggled. It seemed to be a recurring theme. I'd say something that challenged Ria's hold over my body and soul, and Akeno would giggle. I wonder why Akeno does it, though. She seems to be very loyal to Rias, so it didn't make much sense to me. Anyway, I'm going to go home now. And yes, I will still refuse to do these pointless tasks that come with the privilege of being a devil. I grabbed my bag from its position next to the fancy couch that I desperately wanted to own because of how comfy it was and silently left the room. There was nothing left for me to do there anyway. I mean, Rias probably has good intentions, but I don't want to waste my precious high school afternoons handing out flyers that mean absolutely nothing to me. The worst part is that it apparently raises your status and rank in the underworld. Devils have rankings now. Apparently they do. From a low class, to a middle class, to a high class, everyone suffers from discrimination unless they're a pureblood brat that has been spoiled their whole life. I'd try and guess who that brat was if I didn't already know, but I already knew who that person was, and they were my master. Rias did indeed declare that she was officially my master after she brought me back from the dead as one of her devil servants. I laughed it off, though. In what state of mind would I even accept the idea of Rias Gremory being my master, anyway? But the technique of the resurrection was rather unique, though. It was based off of chess and the pieces from the game, and every piece had some special ability or quality. Apparently, some people require more than one piece to be revived, just like me, and, according to some snooping around, I used up all 8 of Ria's pawn pieces because of this special power I hold inside of me. To be honest, I'm not even sure if my information on that is correct, but what you hear from eavesdropping would most likely be 100% legit, so I accepted what I knew as fact. Eavesdropping never does lie to you, after all. Especially when it comes from my master complaining about how useless I am in the clue room during class, when we should both be studying. I had eventually found my way home as I was deep in thought, much to my surprise. I usually end up wandering around the city in a daze for an hour or two before I snap out of my trance and run home in a panic. My house was pretty small, though. It was large enough to fit me and my 2 parents, and that was all that really mattered to us. I entered, flicked my shoes off of my feet and stretched my arms above my head with a yawn. I think I need to train more so I can become stronger, as I have a feeling that I'll have to fight someone or something that I am unable to beat in my current state, but my body is still sore from my last exercise session a few days ago. It wasn't too bad. I was able to push my body to the limit without having to worry about permanently damaging any muscles or bones. That's right, I'm starting to do physical exercise. My parents were also surprised when I told them that I'm going to begin the long process of gaining some muscle, but they gave me their full support in the end. My routine at the moment usually consisted of 100 squats, 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups. It was enough to make my body ache as I'm in really bad shape, but that was apparently good for my muscles. So, with the thoughts of physical exercise in my mind, I entered my room and threw my bag onto my bed, throwing the blazer I usually wore shortly after. I quickly changed into clothes that were more suited to exercise and stretched for a few minutes before I dropped to the floor and started the long and arduous process of completing 100 push-ups. I was very weak and I knew it. Sitting around all day playing video games, reading books and watching anime was not healthy for my body, but I did it anyway. I had no motivation or inspiration to go outside and participate in physical exercise because I had no friends to do it with or the need to even do it, though, so I always thought I could rely on the gym class at school. At least I have a semi-valid reason now. It was nearly midnight and I was staring up at my roof with my right arm raised. I couldn't stop thinking about certain subjects because they refused to leave my mind. I knew that I had read some psychology report on the science behind it at some point in time, but I had forgotten all about it and could not remember why my brain would not stop thinking about things I did not want to think about. The main topic in my brain for a few nights in a row was Yuma Mono. I had every right to believe that she was a fallen angel and had killed me, but there wasn't enough evidence to actually confirm my belief. Although, if her sudden disappearance and lack of contact as well as the lack in my ability to contact her wasn't enough, I had no idea what would be enough to prove it other than seeing her for myself. I sighed and clenched my fist. I knew that something was up with the abandoned church, though. It was most likely a temporary hideout for the group of fallen angels that had been detected in this city, but I wasn't stupid enough to go and check for myself. I had no clue how many there were, and even if I did I wasn't even strong enough to take one out on my own. I quickly cycled to the next topic. My mind was stuck on that nun I had helped this morning. She wanted to go the abandoned church for some reason, and if my suspicions about the fallen angels living there were true, the nun had either left the church in favor of working for the Gregory or had been kicked out for doing something that went against the rules of the church and had been picked up by the Gregory. Both options were basically the same thing, but it was nice to have a little variation every once in a while. I lowered my fist and shut my eyes. Maybe my brain will think of some solution overnight. I really did want some kind of closure to what I have dubbed the Yuma incident, but I also wanted some kind of confirmation on my theory about the fallen angels and the nun. I was dying to know these things. Wanting to know a lot of things also meant that I was most likely going to miss a lot of my valuable sleep time. Knowing that, though, I tried to shut off my mind so I could try and sleep. I shut my eyes and it was morning all of a sudden, much to my surprise. So this is what happens when you're both physically and mentally exhausted. I didn't bother to move my body or check the time. I didn't care about school anyway, so what was the point of turning off my alarm clock and going back to sleep if my mother would wake me up in a minute? I think the benefits of staring at a roof heavily outweighed sleep right now. Ah, it's you again. I turned around with a raised eyebrow. It was the nun again, and she seemed to be wearing the exact same things she wore the previous day, which was just some weird holy garb. This time she didn't have a veil, though. What do you want? I'm kinda running late today and I really have to hurry to get to school. I said that I was running late, even though I was planning on wasting some money at the arcade today, because I seriously could not be bothered dealing with people right now. That included this blonde-haired, green-eyed girl. I wanted to thank you again for yesterday. So, thank you. I crossed my arms and smiled in amusement. This girl seemed to be very innocent by the way she looked at things and the way she acted, and that was a bad thing if she really did work for the Gregory. No problem. Now, because I helped you, I want to ask you a few simple questions that only really need a yes or a no in response. Are you okay with that? The girl nodded and smiled. This is the moment of truth, I guess. I can figure out everything I want with a few words and calm my mind for the day. Maybe I could forward some of the sensitive information I'm about to learn to Rias if I really wanted to, but I don't think she's deserved anything from me just yet. Ask me anything you want. I nodded my head and narrowed my eyes. Here goes nothing. Have you ever heard of someone called Yuma Mono? The girl shook her head. No, I'm sorry, but I haven't. I clicked my tongue in annoyance. I was really riding on that question. My mind was practically full of the Yuma incident, and I seriously wanted it to stop as I consciously don't care about it. Do you work for the Gregory? The girl stood in silence for a few seconds before she quietly sighed. I'm not allowed to answer that. Sorry. If I was able to narrow my eyes any more than they already were, they would be shut. I'll take that as a yes, then. Are a group of fallen angel radicals hiding in the abandoned church? Are they planning anything? The girl was too easy to read. Her hesitation before answering my previous question practically gave the answer away as she had furrowed her brow and had frowned. Another thing that contributed to my deduction was the fact there was absolutely no need to send a nun to an abandoned church in a small town, no matter how big the reason was. Without that piece of information, I never would have figured anything out. Because you figured out that I work for the Gregory, there are 4 fallen angels in the church. I don't know if they're planning anything, though. I sighed. I squeezed as much information out of her as I could, I guess. She doesn't know much about the Yuma incident or the plans of the fallen angels, so I guess I could stop my questioning, as those were the only things I really wanted to know. There is no point in wasting any more of my time with these pointless questions. Oh, one last question. Are you sure you don't know about Yuma Mono? The nun shook her head and I grimaced. She really doesn't know anything about the Yuma incident, then, and that means more painfully boring thoughts on my end. You called. Long raven hair, bright purple eyes and beautiful milky skin. She matched the description of the Yuma I knew, but she looked more mature and risque than the person I was looking for. Her outfit wasn't the same as the one she wore on our little date, but it did look fitting for a fallen angel, though. Her clothes were just a few thin lines of a black leathery fabric that covered the important bits with a belt somewhere in the mix and thigh-high boots. Oh, did I mention the 2 crow-feathered wings sprouting from her back? I'm sure I didn't because her wings aren't a part of her outfit. They're a part of her being. Oh, so now I have my answer. I frowned again and let my arms drop to my side as I was given the answer to the question I desperately needed an answer to. I was seriously hoping I didn't get into a fight with Yuma as I knew I'd get my ass kicked into oblivion, though. I mean, I have no fighting experience, and I was most likely going to go against someone who used to be an angel that participated in a giant religious war. Well, I think she used to be an angel. Angels become fallen angels if they sin, I think, so it would make sense if she used to be an angel. Was she even an angel during the war, though? Yuma glanced at me in annoyance as I muttered my previous statement to myself. You do have your answer to whatever question you were asking. Now, I'm going to take Asia here, and if you try to stop me, I won't hesitate to kill you. I felt my skin become just a little whiter than it usually is. I wasn't too keen on dying today when my new life of a painfully boring eternity had just begun, so letting Yuma take the Asia away was probably the best idea I've had in a while. Don't let me stop you. I mean, if I could actually be bothered to care about someone else for once, I'd try to stop you, but I can't. So go ahead. Feel free to take the girl. Throughout the whole conversation, Yuma had a hand firmly planted on Asia's shoulder. If I failed to comply, I was most likely going to end up dying for absolutely no reason, as Asia would be taken away anyway. I didn't even care for the girl, so there was no problem, actually. I don't even know why I thought of what would happen if I didn't let Yuma take Asia away. It was weird. So, with a clear mind and a heart that felt absolutely no pain or guilt, I decided I wasn't going to die today. I had absolutely no chance in a fight that revolved around someone I knew nothing about, and I knew the reason why. I was just totally normal and there was no changing that. It was nearly midnight. The store I worked at was the only one on the street that was open so late on a weekday, and I was unfortunate enough to get stuck with this work shift. In short, it was the graveyard shift, and I didn't like it one bit, as the other person in this dastardly quiet shop would not communicate with me unless we got an order. We rarely get any orders at this time of the night. I was bored. In fact, there was nothing to do in this store either, especially when you're stuck working the front counter. I know that I'm supposed to clean stuff when there's no one around, but there's only so much you can clean until there's nothing left to clean. Absolutely nothing. I had nothing to think about either, now that the Yuma incident has been solved, along with a lot of my questions having been answered by Asia. My mind couldn't conjure up any wild theories about the things Yuma was currently doing in the city, as I had no knowledge on the politics between all of the religious superpowers. I wouldn't know much about it anytime soon, either, as I'm an unimportant human turn-devil who hasn't even visited the underworld yet. And then I saw someone looking through the window of the shop with a frown on their face. I couldn't identify them as their face was mostly covered by darkness, but they were wearing short denim shorts and a pink shirt with sandals. Their outfit was rather strange when I considered the time. It practically screamed out that they wanted to be kidnapped, and the thought made me snigger. Well, I was laughing until the person stepped into the shop with a sigh. Oh. It's you. It was the younger-looking Yuma in all of her glory. She was probably here to order pizza, as that was the only thing this store sold, but I had to wonder why she came all the way here when she could have visited an all-day convenience store. Yuma glared at me ever so slightly after I initiated the conversation. Aren't you supposed to welcome me with a smile? I forced a smile and watched as Yuma took a small step backwards. When I smiled, my smiles weren't the best. I had good teeth that I looked after, but I couldn't pull off a natural-looking smile unless something made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. It wasn't a quality I was proud of, but I like to believe that it's a result of being too cynical. I discontinued my horrific act of smiling, and I cleared my throat. Stop being rude and I might just help you. Yuma hummed as she looked up at the menu that was high up on the wall behind me. Maybe I would be able to squeeze some information out of her while she waits for her food. It was a good idea, as she was right in front of me and had no way of killing me or fleeing without being caught by the CCTV cameras that hid in the corners of the room, but she'd probably ignore what I had to say anyway. Let's see, I'll take a large shrimp pizza and a medium cheese pizza, thanks. I was surprised when she placed her order. She certainly didn't look like she'd be able to down the two by herself, so she probably had some comrades or friends that didn't have any money to buy food. I doubt one of them is for Asia, as she is basically a captive, but it wouldn't surprise me if it actually was. She is working for the Gregory, after all, so it would fall under Yuma to look after her. It'll be 10 minutes, I guess. You're free to wait inside of the store if you wish. Yuma nodded and pulled a flip phone from a pocket. It looked ancient, but I couldn't judge her as I also had a flip phone. I didn't even use it for anything anyway, but it's a good idea to carry it around in case I need to use it. You're surprisingly polite to someone who has killed you before. I waved a hand in front of my face with a smirk. Store policy. It is my duty as a worker to blah, you probably know all of this crap. Yuma giggled and I let a small smile slip onto my face. It was nice to have a humane conversation with a being that had killed you. Yuma's non-hostile actions mean that she didn't kill me on a whim, either. It most likely means that she had been ordered by a higher-up or the equivalent of her boss. Hey, Yuma, what exactly are you doing in this town? I felt the atmosphere become very hostile very quickly. Maybe I shouldn't have asked that question. Why would you want to know, devil? I crossed my arms and stared Yuma straight in the eyes. It was time to make it or break it, I guess. No pressure at all. Although, knowing that there was potential death right around the corner helped to calm my mind quite a bit. It was a strange feeling, grinning manically as I realized I had a high chance of what I would consider a victory in the face of potential death. Oh, you know, it's not like you threatened me over the life of a human or anything because she was talking to me. It's not like you killed me either. Those two events totally didn't happen. Also, are you here on official business? I'm guessing my master owns the city or something like that, so if you really were here on official business, you would have met with her first. Am I close? Yuma remained silent and put her phone back into her pocket, one of her sharp spear things instantly appearing in the same hand. It was smaller, though. Much more discreet as well, as Yuma's arm was by her side. Probably to avoid being caught on the CCTV cameras. How much do you know? I looked the spear up and down before I glanced at Yuma. She did not look threatening at all when she used her younger-looking form. I mean, she looked so young and innocent. I'm guessing she used some kind of magic, though, as people can't randomly change their appearance at will. If that is the case, then I'm left to decide on which form is her real body. How much do I know? I know that Azazel won't be happy when he finds out that you've wandered into a devil's territory without their permission. My bluff was flawless. Well, I thought it was, and that probably meant it wouldn't work as well as I thought it would. I may be more logical and intelligent than my school teachers think I am, but that doesn't mean I know how to intimidate an opponent with my words. It's a skill I should practice, though, as it will help me escape fights where I'm bound to get pulverized and destroyed in every way possible. Yuma clicked her tongue. You're lucky you're right about that. I grinned as my bluff seemingly worked without an issue. I really didn't think the bluff would work. I knew that Azazel was the leader of the Gremory, but that was it. I had no information on him or his feelings towards politics and his subordinates, but my bluff worked, so I guess I could learn some things about Azazel from my little victory. I crossed my arms with my grin still present on my face. I felt it grow larger than it should be. So, I'm guessing it has to do with Asia. Maybe she has some sort of power that you want for yourself because you think it will increase your rank in the Gremory. You can tell me everything because you know I don't care about what happens. My guesses had some merit to them when I really thought about it. In video games and fantasy novels, those with a great power have more privilege or a higher rank than those who don't. It's most likely going to be commonplace in the underworld, as well as there is a Satan with an unimaginable strength and Azazel who is probably the strongest fallen angel. It should be common sense if it already isn't. Yuma sighed, I can't tell you anything. My grin disappeared from my face and was replaced by a frown. Yuma was keeping everything confidential, and that was probably for a good reason. She didn't want to risk giving out information that could harm her later, as she had the foresight to see that I'd probably use any and all information to my advantage, and I was impressed. Well, there's nothing I can do, then. Let's move the conversation along to trivial small talk. Why are you using your younger form, rather than your older form? Yuma rose an eyebrow, and I mirrored her expression with less enthusiasm. I'm surprised that you're giving up so easily. I sighed and shoved my hands into my pockets. I know when to give up. Knowing when I'm going to waste my precious time arguing is something I'm proud of. Yuma giggled and relaxed her posture. I hadn't noticed that she had been ready for a fight since the moment she stepped into the store, but I guess that explains her hostility and overall sense of paranoia. I guess I can answer your question because you're being so kind. Yuma took a deep breath as I noticed that my coworker placed 2 boxes on the bench next to me. I kind of thought that the operation involving you would take longer than it actually did, so I only brought clothes for how you're seeing me now. I didn't think that would be Yuma's reason. It's idiotic and trivial, but I guess that was a solid reason. People do seem to be interested in the power that I hold, even though they know nothing about it. The same goes for myself, actually. I'm interested in my power but know nothing about it as I haven't been able to summon it. I scratched the side of my head awkwardly as I sighed. You know what my power is? Yuma shook her head and I frowned. It was to be expected, actually. No one knew nothing about my power, but if it's worth killing me over, it must be pretty powerful. Sadly, I don't. Why would you care about it, anyway? You seem as if you're unable to fight, and your enhanced devil body probably makes up for your crappy power, anyway. Yuma was probably right. I felt that I had become stronger and faster after I had been revived, and that my senses were much better than they used to be, so I felt content knowing that my power was probably garbage, and that my resurrection made up for it. I'm just going to tell you that Rias Gremory would care a lot. Anyway, that'll be $17. Yuma already had her wallet in her hand, much to my surprise, picking out the money she needed as slowly as she probably could. She was fumbling around with coins and notes, though, so she probably didn't know how to use the currency of this country. But she eventually pulled out the exact change and placed it on the counter. I looked at it for a second before I glanced up at Yuma who had her hands on her hips. No discount for your girlfriend. That's kinda mean, don't you think? I rose an eyebrow. Yuma seriously wanted me to give her a discount because we had practically had what could have been considered a date a few days ago. I did tell her that I wasn't ready to go out with her when she caught me hanging around on the bridge, so she's probably trying to get the food for as little as she possibly could. Since when were we dating? Yuma tilted her head in confusion. When we had our date in the city. Did you forget? I sighed, ran a hand through my hair and clicked my tongue in annoyance. Yuma was still trying to use that little adventure as an excuse, and I was having none of it. I rejected her and befriended her. I didn't accept her fake love because I was a naive pervert who was lonely and had no friends, so I wasn't going to budge. You may as well stop trying. You know I won't budge and your pizza is going to get cold if you don't hurry. Also, you didn't tell me about your plans, so you only have yourself to blame. Yuma bit her bottom lip and grabbed the 2 boxes before leaving the shop without saying her goodbyes, and it hurt me just a little. It seemed as if we were slowly starting to become friends for real. I sighed. I guess I was too tired to deal with Yuma in my usual manner, but it is my fault for acting the way I did. We are supposed to be enemies, after all. We're going to exterminate the group of fallen angels tonight. I blinked a few times with a furrowed brow. I don't think I heard that right. Rias, as well as me and her other forced slaves, is going to go and fight a group of fallen angels who could still be considered to be a part of a faction that the devil faction has a truce with. I didn't like the idea at all. Rias, you know that this could cause a war, right? We don't even know if they've actually abandoned the Gregory, so killing them could be interpreted as a sign of war. Think this through before you do something you regret. I knew my words were the truth. If Rias took the time to think it through, she'd also come to the same conclusion, but it seemed as if she wasn't going to spend a few minutes thinking about it, as she had no desire to use her brain. Kiba stepped forward. I agree with Issei, President. You should think this through first. I was surprised that Kiba had sided with me, but I didn't openly show it because Kiba and I haven't had many interactions together during our time at Kuo Academy, even when I had joined the Occult Research Club. I would have never thought that he would side with me so soon. I guess it does mean he has a brain and that he isn't afraid to disagree with his master. Issei is right. This time it was Kaneko. It seemed as if this sudden turn of events would lead to a victory on my part. So, with most of her slaves against her, Rias sighed and stared me in the eyes. She had definitely given up on the idea. Without my guidance, Rias would have done something she would probably regret. What do you suggest we do, Issei? I pushed myself off of the part of the wall I had been leaning on and went to grab my bag, and after I had acquired it, I approached the door that would lead to my freedom. I opened the door and turned around with my hand on the handle. I suggest you apprehend the fallen angels and message Azazel again. I shut the door and continued walking. I had no desire to take part in the fight that would probably result in the death of someone as I had no fighting ability. I was weak and I knew it, even though I was making an effort to improve myself. At least I wasn't going to go and die in a pointless fight tonight. It was because I was totally normal and unable to contribute anything in a battleground. The abandoned church was within my field of view. I had been paranoid all night, for some reason. It was almost as if I couldn't trust Rias and everyone else to keep the fallen angels alive, but that was for a good reason. Rias would most likely ignore my suggestions in favor of pursuing her own agenda, and I guess that is why I left to join the fight. Shouts came from the building and the sound of wood being smashed and metal clashing against other material echoed around the area. I watched as a crimson orb went flying through one of the walls, disintegrating the trees and shrubbery it came into contact with moments after. I didn't have a good feeling about this. I really didn't. I was going to get destroyed in every single way possible. I took a deep breath, shut my eyes for a moment and continued walking. My curiosity was taking over, I think. Maybe I was actually going to fight because I wanted some experience in the battleground, but I couldn't figure it out as I was unsure as to why I was even here in the first place. I didn't even care about the things Rias did, and I had made that clear to both Rias and Yuma several times, so that made it harder to guess why I was approaching an abandoned building that was inhabited by paranormal beings in the middle of the night. There were multiple shouts of pain from inside the church, so I sighed as the large double doors were flung open as a fallen angel was assumed to have been thrown into them. They hit the ground back first, tumbled around a bit and then slid to a stop. Right at the base of my feet. They didn't blink and they weren't moving, but I could tell they were still breathing as their chests slowly rose and fell. That was a good sign for me. However, as I looked down at their face, I came to a realization. This fallen angel was the one that had killed me the second time around. But he was knocked out, so it was fine. I brought some cable ties with me just in case, though, but they probably weren't going to keep the guy restrained. I could always give it a shot, I guess. So, with my best efforts, I rolled the fallen angel onto his stomach and pivoted his arms so they were on his back and secured the cable tie so it was as tight as it could be. I took a step back and admired my handiwork. It was a rather neat job, even though I didn't participate in knocking the guy out. I sighed and stepped into the church, though, looking around for any present danger. But it was empty. There was no one in the rather small building, but there were a few broken swords lying around the place, as well as pews that were either completely fine, broken in half or smashed to bits. I was surprised. Was this the true strength of Rias and the other forced slaves? It most likely was, if I had to take a guess. So far, I had only seen a single fallen angel and no one else, so it actually had to be. If I was wrong, then I'd doubt my future guesses and decisions for quite a while. However, as I was thinking about whether or not the destruction was caused by my new friends, I was also figuring out where they had gone. I mean, you don't just knock someone out and leave, so they had to be in the vicinity. The only place that they could have gone was under the building, I guess. I mean, I didn't see or hear them leave, and there was nowhere else they could go, so down was the obvious answer. I walked over to the out-of-place altar. Back at the entrance of the church, it seemed to be pushed out of place, but I never would have thought that it would be hiding a freaking staircase out of all things. Well, it should have been obvious as the group could have only gone under the building, but I still wouldn't have thought that there would have been a staircase. The altar seemed to be very heavy to push though, and I couldn't think of anyone in the peerage who would be able to push it back far enough. I mean, everyone looks physically weak, so there was no hope. Unless one of them has a special ability from their piece that was used to revive them. I shook my head to clear the subject from my mind. I didn't need any distractions. I made my way down the staircase. It was a tight fit, but that was something I should have expected from a passage that was well hidden. My journey down was short, though, and rather dark, but the very large cavern that it led to was rather surprising as it was warm and well lit. The roof was high and the walls were wide. It was mainly made out of the natural rock that was found in the area, but there was a stone staircase on the other side of the room with a wooden cross. Asia was chained to the cross with an older Yuma standing in front of her, looking down at a horde of black-clothed people that were surrounding something or a certain group that I had a relation to. It was definitely the group though, as there was nothing in the world that would attract a whole horde of suspicious-looking people. So I decided to stay put on the staircase. I was going to die if I tried to do anything, so there was nothing I could do. I have no fighting ability, no magical ability, no suicidal tendencies or anything else that comes with a standard hero package. I quietly sighed and scratched the back of my head. There was nothing in the cavern that I could use to my advantage, unfortunately, unless shouting out and grabbing Yuma's attention offered some kind of advantage. The horde started attacking Rias and the rest of the peerage in waves after a few inaudible words from Yuma. Needless to say, there were many cries of pain from both parties. I couldn't see much, though, but what I could see entailed that Kiba and Kaneko were bleeding heavily, while Akeno and Rias seemed to be fine. The blonde idiot and the quiet midget were going to get themselves killed at this rate, and I didn't want to deal with the consequences of my inability to act. It would probably hinder my freedom to do anything as Rias would blame their deaths on me for not doing anything when I could. Kiba took a sword to the stomach and crumpled to the floor, holding the hole that had been made in his body to try and stop the bleeding. Kaneko turned to help Kiba but fell face first to the floor, appearing to have been shot in the head by something I didn't see or hear. I grimaced. I really didn't want to die so soon. With an eternity ahead of me, there were a lot of things I could do and see. There was the development of the Earth and its inhabitants, as well as our technology that has anchored me to this rock planet. Maybe I'd be able to visit other planets and galaxies in my lifetime if I lived long enough, but I don't think I'd have the chance. On the other hand, I'd be stuck with a grieving master that I didn't like if I really didn't do anything. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. Kiba and Kaneko seemed to be pretty strong, so they most likely obtained their injuries from protecting their master. That's an admirable thing to do, so I guess it's my turn to protect them. And I just realized that that's a cliché and corny thing to say when your comrades are facing potential death. The cons of not doing anything heavily outweighed the pros, though, so if I did die, at least I know that I died doing something for other people, even though I only care for myself. If I survive, maybe I'll be appreciated for once in my life. How would I start fighting, though? If I tried to attack the horde, I'd surely get overwhelmed and die instantly. If I tried to fight Yuma, she'd definitely kill me as she's way stronger than me. There was no hope for me. I was dead either way. So, with that in mind, I turned around and started my short journey that would lead to the outside world. I wasn't ready to kill myself, it seemed. It also seemed as if I was still lacking the capabilities to care about anyone other than myself. I sighed again. I had a feeling that everything would be alright in the end. Of course it would. I mean, even though I haven't seen it in action, Rias can teleport, so everything really will be fine in the end. Teleportation solves everything unless it has a limited number of charges to it. It means you can escape from anything you want. As I reached the top of the staircase, my eyes suddenly felt heavy. It was rather late in the night and I didn't get much sleep because of work, but I should be fine. A lack of sleep didn't affect me too badly. In fact, it only really degraded my mental capabilities just as much as they would be if I overslept. Although, I heavily and loudly yawned, contradicting my previous statement. Yawning means you're tired, right? Anyway, I don't regret my decision of fleeing. I mean, I'd just pointlessly die, and that would benefit no one other than those who want me dead. I sighed once more. I realize that I'm making the same points over and over, but they're really the only ones that exist in this little scenario. As I was exiting the church, though, I saw that the fallen angel I had restrained was still in place, eliciting a mental cheer for my pointless success. Step no further, devil. I turned around. Small, short blonde twin tails, large cerulean eyes, milky skin and a single pointed tooth that stuck out of her grin. She looked to be rather young and wore a black gothic dress with white stockings and black pumps. Everything about her was eccentric. I thought she looked rather cute though, but she was a fallen angel and someone who could kill me. An enemy. I'm sure you can see that I'm leaving the premises. I crossed my arms with a frown. I can see that. But, because you're my natural enemy, I have the right to kill you. Why were you here anyway? The fallen angel was a little loud and kind of annoying. She seemed to be naive and innocent though, so I should be able to use that to my advantage. I mean, I wanted to escape and avoid a pointless fight. The both of us wouldn't reap any benefits if we fought, anyway. Listen, I know this will end in a fight, so I'll say this. I think you're cute and I don't want to hurt you. Her face instantly flushed as if she was a middle student who had received her first compliment. She raised her hands to her face and turned her head to the side, muttering some incoherent sentences under her breath. And then she turned to me with a pointed finger. Who do you think you are? You don't just say those things to a lady. I rose an eyebrow. This girl really was as innocent as I thought she was. I mean, she had as much knowledge about romance as a grade school student, so what else had the potential to give everything away? It was pretty humorous, though. Well, I'm Issei Hyoudou. Nice to meet you, fallen angel. Now, if you'll excuse me, I want to go home. I was about to turn around, but I had a feeling that I shouldn't flee just yet. Who knows, maybe this girl would provide me with some interesting moments. I'm not going to let you escape just yet. You've embarrassed me and have invaded our land. I sighed for the umpteenth time and rubbed the back of my neck. There was nothing I could do, I guess. So it really does come down to a fight, alright, then, I guess I can play a little. I started to walk towards the girl with my arms by my side. I was tense and ready to respond to anything, but I wasn't too sure I'd have the ability to survive the potential onslaught. The girl threw a spear that was similar to Yuma's and charged me by hovering above the floor with her wings. I narrowly dodged the spear and could only watch in shock as a fist was centimeters from my face. I grunted as the fist connected with my face, my head snapping backwards. Shortly after, I felt my whole world turn upside down as I found myself lying on my back, looking up at the night sky. I titled my head with furrowed brows. I didn't comprehend what had happened in that short span of time, as it all happened faster than I could react. See, you'll never beat me. The fallen angel stood above me with her hands on her hips, a triumphant grin plastered onto her cheerful face. She looked proud of what she had done, so I rolled my eyes and placed my hands behind my head. If you want to kill me, go ahead. I'm not complaining, you know. The girl's grin faltered ever so slightly and one of her eyebrows twitched. She's hesitating right now. Because she looks so young and is so naive, I'm betting that I'm probably going to be her first kill. Well, about that, her words ended as she sighed and crouched down next to my head. You're free to leave. I mean, you weren't helping your master, right? That means you've done nothing wrong. I quietly hummed to myself. I was free to go. I really wasn't complaining, but it was a stranger turn of events. Letting me go was rather nice of her, though, so maybe my comment about her looks inspired her to spare me from the pain of eternal silence. So, don't tell Yuma I was here, okay? She'd probably hunt me down if she found out. The girl nodded, so I pushed myself to my feet and brushed the dust off of my pants. I turned around and shoved my hands into pockets, slouching over ever so slightly. My back hurt pretty badly, and slouching over alleviated that pain ever so slightly. Oh, you mean Raynare? I forgot to introduce myself as well. My name's Middled. I looked over my shoulder at Middled. She was smiling and waving at me, so I held up a hand for a brief second before I turned my head back to the front. I needed to see where I was going. Knowing that I survived a potentially dangerous encounter brought a little joy to my narcissistic and logical heart, I guess. Although, my back and nose are going to be killing me tomorrow. I had no way to heal it with magic or medicine, either, as they were out of my reach. I groaned in pain. At least I learned Yuma's real name, so that's one positive thing I've managed to take from this night. I grit my teeth as a shock of pain spread throughout my body. I was totally normal, and I was hoping it would change soon as it brought pain to those around me. Before you say anything, Akeno, I'd like to point out that I know that you know I can't fight. The clubroom was unsurprisingly void of any life. It felt unusually empty and lonely, but the busty third-year students stopped the room from feeling as if it was frozen in time. It was strange to be standing in there, only hearing the sounds of my own breathing and an annoying frequency that usually came with a deafening silence. Akeno's body jumped at the sound of my voice breaking the silence. Ah. Oh sorry, Issei, it seemed as if I was lost in my thoughts. Akeno giggled like she usually did, but it sounded forced and was mixed with a lack of energy. I sighed in response and made my way to the couch that faced the windows from my spot in front of the doors, kicking off my shoes and crossing my legs. I can guess that Kiba and Kaneko are at their place of residence because they need to recuperate from their injuries and that the crushing defeat has forced Rias to become an empty husk of a person. Akeno, who had been staring out a window and into the setting sun with a hand gently placed on the glass, had turned to face me with her hands by her side. She sighed, walked over to the couch, sat next to me and placed her head on my shoulder. I didn't move. Akeno obviously needed some mental support right now, and I was more than happy to provide what she needed. I was kind of responsible for what had happened the previous night anyway, so this was what I felt I needed to do to make up for my inability to act. I know that you watched us fight, Issei, and I know that you didn't do anything because you knew you would die. You did the right thing, but it's hard sometimes, Issei. It's hard to fight when you know that you can die and that your friends can die. And you know that all too well without having any experience. Well, no one is dead, so that's something, right? Even though Kiba and Kaneko nearly died, they're completely fine, so there's no need to be so down. Akeno sighed once more and lifted her head off of my shoulder, standing up to probably make tea like she usually did. I felt as if this conversation was going by way too fast. It was almost as if Akeno wanted to flush all of her sadness out of her and get it done with, but I was fine with that. If it was what Akeno wanted, I could only assist her. Even though they're fine, it hurts to watch them struggle to live. They protected Rias and me because they felt as if they needed to, and that meant they were giving up their lives for us. They were ready to die for me even though they were fully aware that I am fully capable of protecting myself. I gently shut my eyes and slowly breathed. I didn't know that Akeno was capable of showing such emotion as she was usually a bright and bubbly girl, but every action has an opposite and equal reaction, so it would only make sense that Akeno would be acting the way she is. She's only part human, after all. I heard a ceramic cup touch the wooden table in front of me, so I cracked a single eye open and reached for the cup of tea I discovered, gently blowing on the hot liquid so it would cool down. There's always next time, you know. I'm not necessarily blaming you, but even though they were protecting you, you had the chance to help them protect you while protecting them at the same time, if that made sense. Akeno sat down next to me once more with a sigh, her head resting on my shoulder once more. I found it hard to act upon that. There's a lot of things that are wrong with me and those insecurities that were made from those errors made me hesitate in the moment. I fully opened my eyes and took a sip of the tea, noting that my mouth was burning from the overwhelming heat of the delicious liquid. I winced as my tongue received the wrath of the hot water. If you want, you can tell me these things. I turned my head to see Akeno slowly shake her own, standing up and grabbing her bag from somewhere in the room. She walked over to the door and turned to face me, a small smile on her face. Akeno isn't ready to share her story or her problems, it seems, but I was fine with that. Not everyone can reveal their secret so easily. Thank you for trying to help me. I know you have a hard time caring for people other than yourself, but you helped me in a time of need. I'll see you tomorrow. Akeno bowed and left the room, leaving me to my own thoughts. I shut my eyes once more and sighed, continuing to sip on the tea while filtering through the very fast and strange conversation. Everyone's been messed up from that fight in some way, I guess. So, Shitori, can you provide me with Azazel's contact information? I was in the student council room, sitting across from Sona Shitori, who was the president of the council. She was also a devil, much to my inherent surprise. I never would have thought that she would have been a part of the paranormal, as she was very strict about her schooling and all of the commitments that came with it. Sona pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose and sighed. Why would you want it? Also, because we're both devils, call me by Citri. It's my real last name. I crossed my arms and hummed to myself. Sona was a smart girl. She knows why I need the contact information of one of the leaders of the three factions, so I didn't need to give an answer, as it should be common knowledge to her by now. You know why, Citri. Besides, if Rias isn't going to do it, I may as well take up the responsibility of solving this issue. Sona nodded and folded her hands together on her desk, staring me straight in the eyes. I contested that stare, but with an uninterested air to try and prove how I wasn't going to deal with Sona's mind games. Why don't you and the rest of the peerage just kill them? They're invading Rias' territory, after all. I sighed and leaned my head on a hand using the desk in front of me, fiddling with a clump of my hair in boredom. How do you think that ended? Sona pushed her glasses back up once more. So that's why Rias and two of her servants weren't present in class. I nodded my head and looked around the small room, noticing a male and a female standing by the door. It was some security, I imagine, as Sona was probably a devil in the higher classes, meaning that she had a lot of potential control in the underworld. It was to be expected, though, as her personality reflects that very image. Anyway, are you able to provide me with a way to contact Azazel? Sona shook her head and I clicked my tongue in annoyance. I should have expected this, actually, as the leader of an entire faction would obviously want to avoid being contacted by everyone who knew the right people. An example of this type of person was me. The only thing I can do is pass a message on to my sister who is the Leviathan Satan. She's able to contact Azazel whenever she pleases because of her status. I rose an eyebrow. I have no clue what the Satans are or what they do, but you obviously have to be powerful to obtain the title. I imagine that all of the Satans are high-class devils as well as they have the necessary resources to train their powers and strength. They were, in simple words, able to get strong really quickly because they were privileged. That'll have to do, I guess. If you get a response from your sister with a time period in which someone will come to fix the issue, please send me a message. I stood up and grabbed my bag, noticing that the sun was starting to fall beyond the horizon. I needed to get home as my parents were probably wondering where I was as I hadn't contacted them to tell them why I was unusually late in my arrival. It was easily fixable, though, as I can call them if something comes up or if something happens that will prevent me from returning to my place of residence. I swiftly left the room without a second thought. I had nothing else to do or say in that room or in the school in general, so I was going to head straight home. I deserved some time where I could laze around without worrying about anything as the day was a little harsh on my psyche. I did find out what happens when I don't act when I need to, after all, and that was the most damaging thing that has happened to me today. It's Issei. I encountered Middlet and the younger Yuma on my way home from school. They were wandering around the streets for some unknown reason, but they stopped to notice my presence. I sighed, though, and briefly rose my only free hand to greet the pair of fallen angels. I probably wasn't going to be able to go home as soon as I thought because they looked as if they were going to some fancy place for some event. Yuma wore an expensive-looking black dress, while Middlet was wearing the same clothes she was wearing last night. Yes, it is indeed Issei. Now what do you want? I kinda want to go home and relax for once in my life. Yuma sighed and crossed her arms while Middlet giggled. My reason was pretty bland and I knew that it was, but it was a legit reason that deserved some respect. Everyone wants to rest at some point in their life, and they expect that their rest is respected and undisturbed. And the same goes for me because I think I'm lazy at heart, so there was nothing else to say about it. We're going out for dinner. Do you want to join us? Yuma had asked that question and my only response involved rubbing my chin in thought. Did I really want to go out with two of my enemies under friendly terms? On one hand, I'll be able to taste some delicious food, not that my mother's food isn't delicious. It just gets bland sometimes. On the other hand, I'll probably miss my resting period and will have to pay for my own food. I'll get to dine on some good food with two pretty ladies, though, so maybe I'll have some fun. I made up my mind, yeah, sure, why not? I need to stop at my place to grab my wallet and get changed, so I hope you two don't mind. I shoved my free hand into my pocket and continued walking, Middlet on my left and Yuma on my right. We made some uninteresting small talk about the weather and how it has continuously been unbelievably hot and sunny these past few days for a couple of minutes before we arrived at my place, the small two-story house that was lit up like a Christmas tree. I opened the door and announced my presence. I'm back. I hope you don't mind, Mom, but I'm going out for dinner with some friends. My mom instantly appeared from the kitchen, her eyes watering. I rose an eyebrow as I didn't quite understand why she seemed to be tearing up. Was it because I was going to skip a meal of hers for the first time, or was it because I was finally doing something with the people who I consider to be my friends? I think it's the latter. Are your friends here, Issei? Don't be rude and invite them in. It's cold outside and you don't want them to get sick. I sighed and rubbed the back of my head, kicking my shoes off of my feet and turning around. I really didn't want to invite the two in as my mom will absolutely destroy any pride and dignity they think I have because she's eccentric in a bad way. Feel free to wait inside if you want. It's cold outside. The two girls stepped into my house so I immediately turned around and made my way upstairs. I quickly got changed and hurried downstairs, hoping no collateral damage has been done. However, what I found was actually kind of shocking. Yuma and Middlet were having a civilized conversation about music and whatnot with my mother all of people. They only noticed my presence when I cleared my throat as well, probably meaning that they were too invested in their conversation to actually care about me and my arrival. Shall we get going? I sat on the couch in my usual spot in the clubroom. Rias was here today instead of Akeno, so it was just my master and myself that have been left with an awful silence. It felt as if the sadness Rias was showing was turning the room into an ice cave because it was cold and uncomfortable to stand in the same space as her. Rias, stop beating yourself up. It's not fun to feel uncomfortable because you can't deal with a simple issue. Rias glared at me, you don't know what it feels like. You've only ever cared about yourself and that's why I wish I never revived you. You're a narcissistic piece of shit that doesn't help anyone, and when we needed you the most, you ran away with your tail in between your legs. I recoiled slightly from shock. I never expected Rias to snap so quickly, but seeing your close friend stand on the line between life and death must break you quite a bit. Although, it couldn't be too bad if you know that the people in question are going to survive without any problems, meaning that the anger was uncalled for. Well, I know I'm the way I am, but at least I don't take my sadness and it turn into an anger that will be used against other people. Also, you saw me there. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Rias winced as I mentioned how she was unjustly shouting at me. I did kind of deserve a good talking to, but I didn't deserve to be shouted at and treated like utter crap. I didn't say anything because I know you're friends with the fallen angels. I took a deep breath and shut my eyes. Rias was actually right for once. No matter how many times I told myself that they were my enemy, I ended up befriending them. I think I just found my main reason for not acting when I should have, though. I made friends with the person who had killed me and didn't want to hurt her for some reason. Knowing that I tried to protect my enemy hurt me just little, but I know that I cannot undo my actions. Well, you got me there. I did make friends with them, but that doesn't mean I'm not capable of hurting them. Rias sighed and supported her head with a hand as she leaned on her desk. I shut my eyes and waited for whatever was going to be said next. It was quite a while, though, but I didn't mind the silence. The sadness in the air was practically gone after Ria's short burst of violence, so I didn't have to try and force myself to feel comfortable anymore. How was your date last night? I rose an eyebrow and glanced at Rias. How the hell does she know that I went out with them last night? It wasn't even a date anyway, but that didn't matter. I wanted to know if Rias was stalking me or something like that because the possibility of my every action being watched started to develop a paranoia that wouldn't go away if it turned out to be true. It wasn't a date, but it was pretty fun. Actually, it was a lot of fun. We had dinner at a restaurant and then walked around a nearby park. Rias made no effort to say anything more for a short while, but when she started to form a sentence, flames rose from the magical circle in the corner of the room, eliciting a curse from Rias. This could only mean trouble, and considering the fact that I was totally normal, I wouldn't be able to do much to help. End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends.